You didn't wake up this morning and decide to do nothing. You woke up and something inside you just wouldn't move. Maybe you stared at the ceiling longer than you should have. Maybe you opened your phone, closed it, opened it again, not because you wanted to, but because you didn't know what else to do with the weight you were carrying. And the worst part? You looked at everything you needed to do and you felt nothing. No motivation, no drive, just a kind of emptiness that's hard to explain to anyone who hasn't felt it. So you called yourself lazy, because that felt like the only explanation. But here's what no one told you. Laziness and exhaustion look exactly the same from the outside, and almost no one stops to ask which one it actually is. Think about the last few weeks, not just the big things, the small things. The conversation you had to manage carefully because someone was upset, the decision you made while already unsure of yourself, the moment you smiled when you didn't feel like smiling because it was easier than explaining, the night you lay awake not because you weren't tired, but because your mind refused to stop processing everything at once. You have been working, not on tasks, on people, on emotions, on holding things together that no one else even noticed were falling apart. This is what psychologists call emotional labor, the invisible cognitive and emotional work of managing feelings, both yours and others, to keep daily life functioning. And unlike physical work, emotional labor doesn't leave you tired in a way you can point to. It leaves you empty in a way you can't explain. It quietly drains the part of your brain responsible for motivation, decision-making, and self-regulation, the prefrontal cortex. And when that part is depleted, your brain doesn't wave a white flag. It just goes quiet. It stops generating energy for things that feel optional. And suddenly, everything feels optional. Here's the part most people never reach. The reason this happens isn't weakness, it's actually the opposite. The people who experience this most deeply are usually the ones who feel things more intensely, who care more than they let on, who carry more than they ever say out loud. Psychologists have found that individuals high in empathy and conscientiousness are significantly more vulnerable to emotional exhaustion, not because they're fragile, but because their nervous systems are working harder, processing more, absorbing more from their environment. Your brain learned early that emotions need to be managed. Maybe you grew up in an environment where things were unpredictable. Maybe you learned to read rooms before you could read books. Maybe you spent years being the stable one, the dependable one, the one who figures it out. That pattern became a default setting, and default settings run in the background all the time, whether you notice them or not. This isn't a character flaw, it's an adaptation. It's your nervous system doing exactly what it was trained to do. The problem isn't that you're wired this way. The problem is that this wiring was never meant to run continuously without rest. Here is what's happening inside your brain when exhaustion reaches this point. Your brain runs on two systems. One is fast, automatic, reactive. It handles everything familiar. The other is slow, deliberate, effortful. It handles decisions, focus, and emotional regulation. Psychologist Daniel Kahneman called these System 1 and System 2. When you are emotionally exhausted, System 2 is essentially running on low battery. And here's the critical part. The brain, in this state, begins rationing its resources. It deprioritizes things that require effort, including starting tasks, sustaining attention, and feeling motivated. Think of it like a phone at 4% battery. It doesn't run all your apps. It goes into survival mode. It does the minimum. That's not laziness, that's resource management. And just like a phone, the only real fix isn't forcing it to run more apps, it's recharging the battery in a way that actually works. But here's where it gets more specific, because rest doesn't always recharge you, and if you've ever taken a day off and still felt exhausted, you already know this. Research in recovery psychology shows that passive rest, scrolling, lying down, watching something, restores physical energy, but does very little for emotional and cognitive depletion. What actually restores the nervous system is something called psychological detachment, a genuine mental and emotional disconnection from the sources of your stress, not avoidance, but intentional release. The first thing to understand is the difference between stopping and recovering. Stopping means you're no longer doing the thing. Recovering means your nervous system has actually returned to baseline. You can stop working and still not recover if your mind is still running the loop. So what does actual recovery look like? The first step is to locate where the drain is coming from, not the tasks, the emotional weight underneath the tasks. Because sometimes you're not exhausted by what you're doing, you're exhausted by what you're feeling while doing it. Uncertainty, pressure to perform, fear of disappointing someone. These emotional undercurrents cost far more energy than the work itself. When you identify the real source, you stop trying to fix the wrong thing. The second step is to stop trying to motivate yourself into action before you've restored capacity. Motivation follows action only when there is enough neural energy to initiate that first step. If the tank is empty, no amount of discipline or self-talk will generate momentum. Forcing it creates shame, not results. Instead, lower the threshold. Make the first action almost embarrassingly small, not because you're lowering your standards, but because you're working with your brain's actual state, not the state you wish it were in. The third step is to give your brain genuine sensory rest, not mental stimulation disguised as rest. This means time without input, no background noise, no content, no information. Even 10 minutes of true quiet where nothing is demanding your attention begins to lower cortisol and allow the prefrontal cortex to reset. It sounds simple, it is, and most people almost never do it. The fourth step is to stop narrating yourself as someone who is failing. The brain does not distinguish between a story about you and the reality of you. It responds to both equally. When you repeat the story that you are lazy, broken, falling behind, your brain begins allocating resources accordingly. It reduces effort toward goals that feel hopeless. Reframing isn't toxic positivity, it's neurological accuracy. You are not lazy, you are a system in need of restoration. Those are fundamentally different operating conditions. And the fifth step, perhaps the hardest, is to allow yourself to need recovery without justifying it. You don't have to earn rest by being productive enough first. You don't have to be visibly falling apart to deserve a pause. The nervous system doesn't negotiate. It simply depletes, and then it stops cooperating. Here is the single mental model to hold on to when everything feels too heavy. You are not a machine that can keep producing indefinitely. You are an organism with a nervous system that requires input, processing, and recovery in cycles. Every high-performing biological system, from cells to ecosystems, operates in rhythms of exertion and restoration. The belief that you should be constantly productive is not a standard, it's a distortion, and it is costing you more than you realize. When you feel that paralysis, that blankness, that strange inability to begin, it is not your character speaking, it is your system communicating. Something needs to be restored. Something needs to be released. Something has been held for too long without being set down. You are not behind. You are not failing. You are not lazy. You have been carrying weight that most people never acknowledge, not even to themselves. And somewhere beneath the exhaustion, beneath the guilt of resting, beneath the quiet shame of not being who you think you should be by now, there is someone who has been trying consistently with whatever they had left. That person deserves more than judgment. They deserve to understand what's actually happening. And now you do. The question isn't whether you can push through. You already know you can. The real question is, what would it feel like to finally stop pushing just long enough to come back whole?